So in this video, we're going to look a little bit at what happens, how do we get sines and cosines for those points on our circle that aren't in a quadrant but are on the edges. So right here, like this angle right here, an angle of 0 or 360. What happens to sine and cosine? Or what about 90 right here at 90 degrees? And we're going to use the same idea that we're on a unit circle, so our hypotenuse is always 1. And if you think about the points, and our cosine of theta is x, right? We've said this before. And our sine of theta is then y, because it works for a point if I go randomly over here, right? If this is 1 and this is x and this is y and this is my theta reference, cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse, which is x over 1 or x. And sine is opposite over hypotenuse, which is y over 1. Once I go on the corners, I no longer have a triangle. And that's okay though, because we're still going to use our x and y. So let's think about the coordinates. Right here, the x coordinate is 1 and the y coordinate is 0. At the very top, the x coordinate is 0 and the y coordinate is 1. When I'm over here at 180, the x coordinate, I've gone backwards. So the x coordinate is -1 and the y coordinate is 0. I have not gone up at all. And then when at the very bottom, the x coordinate, I didn't go left or right at all, and my y coordinate is -1. So we can use this to also try and figure out, like, what would sine of 90 degrees be? Well, if my sine is my y and I'm up here, I think that sine of 90 is 1. Let's check with our calculator. What happens when I do sine of 90? I do indeed get 1. How about cosine of 90? Cosine of 90, I get 0. And there it is. There's my x, there's my y, there's my cosine, there's my sine of 90 degrees. Right there. X and y, cosine and sine. I can do something similar at 180. I think that sine of 180 should be the y value when I'm right here. How high am I? Well, I'm not high at all. That should be 0. And cosine of 180 should be my x coordinate right there, which should be -1. Again, check them with your calculator. What is sine of 180? And I get 0. Cosine of 180. And I get -1. There we go. Okay. So we can do those on the corners, and we just are still thinking about x's and y's. Okay. So then the last question I want to do really quickly is, I have 3 angles in standard position. So angle A would be the angle that goes basically to here. And then angle B would be the angle that goes all the way around in standard position. So we have these 3 angles, A, B, and C. Which ones will have a positive cosine ratio? Which ones will have a negative cosine ratio? Okay, so let's start with positive cosine ratio. Positive cosine ratio, you can either think of it as quadrants or you can think of it as x. Remember, cosine's about the x. So basically you're saying, if I was right here and I drew my triangle, or I thought about the x coordinate, where will x be positive? Well, right here. This would be a positive. Or if I was here at this one and I drew this triangle, I would have a positive x. So a positive cosine ratio is going to be at point A and point C, or angle A and angle C. Where would I have the negative cosine ratio? That's going to be right here at angle B. That will have a negative cosine ratio because the x coordinate is negative. Okay? Okay, let's think about sine. So now sine is my y. Where will I get a positive y value? If I look at my picture, right, where is my y value going to be positive? Well, it's going to be positive right here. So angle A will have a positive sine ratio. The other one would be at angle B. And where will I have a negative sine ratio? It will happen when y is negative, which happens at angle C. So hopefully you now have a better understanding of how we get trig values of how they relate to this unit circle and how we can get negative answers or answers for negative angles or angles bigger than 90.